Hey, Frank.
Hey, Holly.
Okay.
And Andy 好像还没来，没关
Okay. Uh-huh.
没关系。
Okay.
I'll wait till both of you are here and then I'll start the interpreting.
好，我刚想告诉你，现在还没有 interpreter option。
哦，
嗯
那我应该现在如果现在说没有，就是现在说了你们都还没有 join，
哼，Yep。
不知道为什么。
嗯
我现在可以按这个 start，但是好像你们要先 join 一下，我不知道怎么 join。上次等了过了几分钟就说你 join，不知道为什么。
Yeah，好像就是这样，something like that。是的。
OK。
OK，我去拿一个。
好，
I'm gonna
好，
grab something。
好，可以。
Okay, Andy is here.
Okay, let's get this set up then, and then we can begin. So let's see. Interpretation, and then I'm just going to stop share real quick. It says you haven't joined yet, Lihao, but I'm going to press start anyways. Andy, it says you've joined. So here's start.
You know what? I have the option already. Oh, I am not I'm not an interpreter for some reason.
I think it's because it says you're using maybe a different. I don't know why.
Oh, really?
Yesterday this didn't happen.
Exactly, and the account looked different. Give me a minute. Let me leave and
no
rejoin.
worries, Andy. Yeah, okay. You try to do that, Andy. You can get it started.
Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. All right. Hi, everyone. We'll begin momentarily. Thank you all for being here. Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Dolce. I'd like to, on behalf of our office, welcome you all for being here tonight. I am the education director of our office at St. Cloud State University, and I am really thrilled to be able to offer this series to all of you. Our goal is to provide a space to explore many different aspects of second language education, of Chinese language education. And part of that is to share diverse voices and diverse experts from the field. And so tonight we'll be hearing from Gerdine Ulysse, who is a professor of French and Creole, Haitian Creole at University of Chicago. But her PhD is in second language acquisition, and so she has a lot of knowledge and experience teaching second language. And so a little bit more about Gerdine. Gerdine was born and raised in, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, so Gerdine will have to improve it for me, but Gerdine is from La Gonâve. It's an island right off the coast of Haiti and the Caribbean. Gerdine earned her PhD in second language acquisition from Carnegie Mellon, and she also holds a master's degree in French with a specialization in teaching French as a second language. She's currently an instructional professor of French and Haitian Creole at University of Chicago. Gerdine also loves speaking and teaching a variety of languages and enjoys exploring different issues that affect the language learning process. And so with that in mind, I think Gerdine's having some trouble joining. So hopefully she'll be here in a moment. But I'll ask you to just stick with us here and she should be on momentarily. So yeah, just give us a second to figure out these tech issues. Okay, without further ado, Gerdine is now promoted to a panelist. And so, yeah, so Gerdine, the floor is yours. Oh, a couple of notes here about how this goes. So hi, Gerdine, I can see you now. A couple of things that are important to mention. First off, just so everyone knows, like tonight's session will be recorded and we will make it available online to be viewed later. Another thing that I want to be known is that, we have interpretation available to those that need it or want it in any way. So the way that it works is you should all see on the bottom, most likely on the bottom, but in your control panel, there'll be an option for interpretation. And if you want to use that to hear Gerdine's talk in Mandarin, please, you can click on that and then click Chinese. Do not click the English option, only click the Chinese option and you can hear Mandarin. If you'd like to listen in English, then simply don't press anything and you can hear Gerdine in English. Gerdine will give her talk in English. Okay, so without further ado, Gerdine, the floor is yours and I'll stop sharing my screen and you should be able to share yours if you'd like. So okay. Without further ado, Gerdine, Ulysse.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to talk about the Multi-Literacies framework. It's a framework that I've used a lot in the past and even in my current teaching. And yeah, it's always a pleasure to share it with others. So let me try to share my slides with you. It's saying that I can't share, but okay, now I can. Okay. All right, thank you. So today the title of our workshop is the importance of using the multi-literacies approach or framework in K-12 L2 pedagogy. And so my plan for us is to talk about the definition of the multi-literacies approach and talk about what it entails. Perhaps it might be a new approach for some of you. We'll also talk about the 4 curricular components. So these are the components that are essential when it comes to a multi-literacies approach. We'll then talk about the principles of literacies, considering the multi-literacies framework, the process of designing meanings, because that will happen a lot when we are talking about the multi-literacies approach. I have a lesson plan here today that I'd like you to see what a multi-literacies, a lesson that that uses a multi-literacies approach looks like. And we'll have discussion, an activity where you have questions, and we'll be able to have a discussion about that. Okay, so the multi-literacies approach was introduced by the New London Group in 1996. And the New London Group is a group that is composed of 10 academics. And as you know, we use technology a lot in our daily activities. And so we have communication environment that is characterized by multiplicities of media and modes, as well as increasing local diversities and global connectedness. And so we start having, with the use of technology, we have different modes and different platforms where people around the world, we can be connected with each other. And so the goal of this framework is to create a new approach for pedagogy, for language L2 pedagogy. So the primary goal of multi-literacy learning is to develop students to become designers of their social features. So with this approach, students become more empowered. They start using, they are able to create their own meanings, and they can use these meanings, these newly created meanings, in other contexts in the future based on their own goals and objectives. And so the principles of multi-literacies result in both curricular and pedagogical changes. So the curricular changes involve broadening the literacy curriculum to include multimodal meaning makings. So in our activities in the classroom, we start using not only papers, right, and pen and pencils, we start using technology. We start using more web 2.0 kind of tools like blogs and different websites, different platforms where students, where learners can create meanings, because not only reading, writing, listening, speaking are important, but viewing is really important. And we also have that pedagogical shifts. The pedagogical shifts are exemplified by the learning by design framework. And when we're talking about the learning by design framework, that's really important for us. And I'll talk about it in the next slide, which is right here. What is this, right? When I mention it, you say, what is that? And so the learning by design framework involves 4 curricular components or dimensions. And these dimensions, they are really important when we creating a curriculum or a lesson. The first one is situated practice, which bridges students out of school literacy activities and life worlds with what and how they are learning in school. So what we do in the classroom should be related to what they would do in real life, in a setting that's not the classroom, right? And this way students can see the real reasons why we are doing the activities we're doing in class, why we are acquiring certain skills in class. It's to do something that they will do in the future in real life purposes. Overt instruction teaches, that's the second component, which teaches a meta language of multimodal design. So this is where we talk about the grammatical, the language, the grammatical rules. We make sure that students can develop or discover those rules on their own, or we can guide them so they can discover them on their own. Critical framing is the third curricular component, which provides opportunities for students to critique text within social context. So there, we can step back a little bit and critique, analyze. We can analyze text. Start thinking about why this is happening, why this looks this way. We can ask different questions in order to understand why this text looks like it does. Okay. And transform practice is a fourth component. It facilitates students to apply and creatively extend knowledge through the redesign of meaning and text in their own context. And this is my favorite. I'll say it because this is where you can actually, we see how students use what they know to create something completely new, and sometimes using a different genre. We see how creative they can become. So I really like transform practice. So what is redesign of meanings? What is this? This point that's really crucial for Multi-Literacies framework. So when it comes to design of meanings, it's really important to think about three terms. The first one is available designs. So what is available designs? Available designs would refer to a sum up of all knowledge of a person based on experiences and cultural backgrounds, or resource to which one refers to construct meanings from a text. So we all here, we have different available designs because we have different experiences. And when we're reading or when we're looking at something, we rely on different knowledge, different experiences in order to make sense, in order to understand this text. And so these experiences, they would be what we call available designs, okay? Experiences and cultural backgrounds, okay? They are all resources. Okay, so the other term that's really important is designing. Designing, which is the process involves in action, the process that involves in action on or with the available designs in order to represent or decontextualize the text for meaning making. So the fact that we can rely on those experiences, that action itself, as we're trying to understand the text, that's designing. We are designing meaning. Okay, so that's the other term that's really important. Okay, we do that all the time when we see something new, especially when we see something new, we do it. And the third term is redesign, which is a product of designing, which will become a new available design. And the redesign can be used for new meaning making. So if you're thinking about a circle, right, we're going on a circle. So we have available design. Some of our knowledge, experiences that we have, the fact that we can think about it to make meaning, then that's designing. And that's newly constructed meaning based on that context. That's the redesign. Okay, we design a new thing. And sometimes this new understanding, as we create with it, it can become a new available design. Okay. Okay. I hope everybody is following well. Okay. Now let's just think about some examples of available designs, designing, and redesign. Okay, we have a stop sign and we have exit sign. So now let's say you don't know a language, but you've had, I would think all of us who have some kind of experiences with exit and stop signs. So once let's say we see stop sign and exit sign in another language, maybe we're walking, we're traveling, we see those signs. We don't know the language, but we automatically think about, oh, maybe I saw this shape before. Maybe I saw this color before, right? Maybe you rely also not only on the color and shape. You could also think about where this sign you find is located, because usually stop signs, they are at an intersection. Exit signs can be by a door, right, to show you where to get out of a building or etc. So the fact that you can rely on those experiences, then this is your available design, right? That's the experiences you had to understand what a stop sign is in that language, right? And just thinking about the available designs in that context and applying in that country that you're traveling in, then that's designing. And the fact that now you understand, oh, this is how I say stop. Okay, oh, this is how a stop sign looks like in this culture, in this language. That's redesign. Okay. Or that's the same thing can apply to exit sign. Let's just think about another example. And this happened not too long ago. So I have a 5-year-old, but then he was 4. So he got sick sometime in November of last year, I believe. So we went to see the doctor. And as we were waiting in the lobby, he saw a please wear mask sign, okay, which is really common with nowadays with the pandemic. And he asked me, what does it say? He likes to do that. He likes to ask me those types of questions. But that day I said, what do you think it says? And he said, I don't know. I know he doesn't know how to read, but I asked him and he says, I don't know. And I said, look at it, right? I'm guiding him. And I said, look at this picture and look at those ones. And so I guide him a little bit. And he said, oh, okay. So that means yes. And that means no, that means no. And I said, yeah, it means that you should wear your mask this way and you should not wear them those ways. So I helped him a little bit, but you can see how he can rely on, maybe he saw that check mark, the green check mark somewhere, okay? Maybe he relies on maybe games, or maybe because he knows that's how people wear masks. That's how he wears it. So that way he knows, okay, this is how it should be. And maybe he knows the X's, right, means red means no. And so the fact that he can do that, rely on those experiences, that's his available design, right? Knowing check marks means no. The green check marks means yes, and the X's means no. So this way, this is his available design. And the fact that he can do this, that's designing. And let's say he was much older and he had to maybe put this sign on a blog, right? This would become the redesign. Or even at his age, he can go and tell somebody a story about a day he went to the doctor's office and he saw a please wear a mask sign. So that's something he can do. And by telling the story with what he knows already, this is redesign as well. Okay, so I hope this is clear what available design, designing, and redesign, what they mean in that framework, the multi-literacies framework. So the other aspect that really needs to be aligned with the framework, the multi-literacies framework, is the learning objectives. So the learning objectives, they have to reflect linguistic, cognitive, and social cultural dimensions of literacy. And those dimensions, they have to align with the 7 principles of literacies. And so let's talk about what those principles are, those 7 principles. According to Kern, the first one is interpretation. A learner should be able to use the available designs or own conceptions to interpret or construct meanings from text. As instructors, we can guide them, but they should be able, no matter their age, they can start reflecting. They can start interpreting text. They start tapping on the available designs in order to construct meanings from text. The second one is collaboration. So writing is a communicative act, and that a text is written for a reader, which means that the writer writes by using specific forms, contents, and styles that he or she believes that will motivate and facilitate the reader's understanding. So we have to think about our audience. When we have a piece of writing, it's written for an audience in mind, because as we write, we want to communicate, and we want that to be aligned with who is going to read the text. Conventions, that's the third principle, where learners learn linguistic conventions and the ability to establish lengths, to create phrases and sentences, since reading and writing varies. They vary based on individuals and cultures. So we have to think about how conventions, different features in the language can vary based on that culture or the individual that who writes the text. The fourth one is cultural knowledge. This is tied with the previous principle. It's important for a reader to understand the culture and beliefs of the society in which the writer is from or is writing about. So again, we have to go further than just looking at the text. We have to go we have to go beyond the text, or who writes it, the audience, and the culture we're talking about, right? We have to situate the text to understand it, to deepen our understanding of it. We have also problem solving, where learners do active reading, which means they do not only understand the words, but they also try to figure out the relationships between the words used in the text and between the text and the real or imagined world. Okay, so again, we have to step back a little bit and move beyond the text and start thinking about the bigger picture. what do we understand? What would this text, by reading it, what that entails in real life, okay, purposes, or in the imagined world that you like to consider. Reflection and self-reflection is another principle of multiliteracies or of literacy, where readers and writers, they consider language and its relation to the world and their personal life. Right? You read, you reflect on how this relate to me and my personal experiences. And the last one is language use, where literacy requires one to be aware and knowledgeable of ways that language is used and spoken and written forms relating to specific contexts to create discourse. Okay, so with a variation in general, we will start knowing how language use can vary, right, based on specific context and specific genre or discourse. Okay, those are the 7 principles of literacy. So this is like a recap for you. So overall, we have available designs. In general, they are the content or what to teach. What to teach. The principle of literacy, the 7 principles we just talked about, they should be involved in the learning processes. It is how to teach. And the 4 curricular components, they relate to the instructional activities, and they are also the application of what and how we teach. Okay, so all of them, they are interconnected as we are considering them and implementing that approach in our classroom. So here I have some examples for you. So for each curricular component, you have some kind of activities you can do. And sometimes you can use same activities, but that would reflect 2 different components, for example. So we have reading focused activities, writing focused activities, and orality focused activities. And so for reading focused activities, you can have for situated practice, you can have directed readings, taking activity, readers theta, reading journals. For writing, you can have journal writing, free writing, creative writing, such as blogs, web pages. For orality focused activities, you can have voice journals, peer small group surveys, oral presentations, live or recorded, description or analysis of visual images. When it comes to overt instruction, you can have, for reading activities, you can have identifying word relationships or associations, identifying, analyzing syntactic relationships, discourse markers, and cohesive devices in text, designing text maps, comparing 2 texts who have the same genre. And for writing, you can have mapping, teaching genres, revising, editing, paragraph strategies, sentence and discourse markers, sentence combining. And for orality focused activities, you can have information gap activities, word association games, focused description, narrations of visual images. For critical framing, when it comes to reading focused activities, you can have critical focus questions, summary writing based on text map, for example, if you use text map. For reading, you can have sensitization, through reading, shifting contextual parameters, peer response, editing. And for orality, you can have voice reflective journaling or presentation, live or recorded. And finally, for transform practice, you can have dialogic transformation. I like this one. It's fun to see how students can be so creative, see a text and then turn it into a dialogue, for example. For writing, you can have redesigning stories, stylistic reformulation, general reformulation, inventory story continuation. Yes, this is really fun. When you have a text or basically any genre, but it's fun when we have a story and you ask students to invent story continuation. And you think it would be simple, right? Few sentences, they would be done. No, they just become so creative and give you so much more than you expected. So this is this one, I use it a lot and it can be really fun with students. And for orality focused activity, you can have oral reformulation, written to oral, or presentation, live or recorded. So these are some examples of activities that you can use based on what you would like to focus on your lesson. Okay, so let's talk about an example of a lesson using Multi-Literacies framework. I'd like to share that with you. It's a lesson that I have used. Okay.
Do you need to do anything?
Let me share again.
Do you need to do anything?
I'm trying to see if I could share this text. Can you see it? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So here, this is an example of a lesson that I've used for a French 1 or 2. So it's a second semester of French. And the theme is food. And the topic is le repas, it's meals, and how you can prepare a recipe. Comment préparer une recette. So here I have goals, right? You have those learning goals. They tend to be a little bit the broader, and you have the learning objectives. They are more specific. And I am going to show you the two types, right? The goals and the learning goals and learning objectives for this lesson. As we know, we need the linguistic, cognitive, and sociocultural goals. Same for objectives. So for linguistic, students would be able to identify the appropriate language used depending on genre and setting. Students will be able to use and apply vocabulary related to the food making process, so ingredient, cooking utensils, measurement of quantity. Cognitive, students will be able to develop abilities and critical and functional analysis of text.
Gerdine, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There's been several student or people, I'm sorry, teachers and professors that have asked if you'd be willing to share this as a document in the chat.
Oh, let's see if I know how to do it.
It's very simple. All you have to do is
Chat.
Click on the little like document thing on the bottom, right above where you insert text. There's like a little next to the smiley face.
Okay.
If you click on that and then find the document on your computer, wherever it's living, it'll attach. There you go. Thank you.
No problem.
Can you share it with everyone? Because you just shared that only with me. Just share it with everyone.
Okay, let's see if we can do that. Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
And all right, I think now we all should see it. Okay. Now we're trying to.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no.
Feel free to continue now. I think it was hard for people because it might be a little small on the.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I hope everybody has it now. And we were, I believe, talking about the cognitive learning goal. So for cognitive, student will be able to develop abilities and critical and functional analysis of text by comparing written and visual genres of text. A student will develop skills that enable them to create meaning from authentic text. Sociocultural, student will be able to draw comparisons between their culture and the culture of the target language. They will also be able to understand the influence of culture on the use of language. And lastly, student will be able to analyze the differences between the units of measurement used in the US and in France. So learning objectives, they tend to be a little bit more specific. So for linguistic, students will be able to examine the use of infinitive and the imperative form of verbs in creating recipes. Students will be able to identify and use measurements in describing quantity. Students will be able to use setting appropriate vocabulary related to food in a way that is comprehensible to a native or non-native speaker, with 80 to 90% accuracy. For cognitive learning objective, students will be able to identify different ways of writing recipes. Students will be able to critically evaluate practices related to food in both target and home languages. For sociocultural, students will be able to identify different kinds of cake in France. Students will be able to draw comparisons between the ingredient of food in both target and home languages. So these are a few things that we'll need for the lesson: projectors, laptops, computers. You could also put a website if you'd like to. Okay, so as I will be going through the steps, so these are the time, that's the time it will take. It's about 15 minutes lesson. And you'll see that I mentioned what curricular component that it relates to, okay? So first of all, students, first look a set of pictures of food from different cultures and guess where it is from based on how it looks. Students then look at another set of pictures of dessert, cake, ice cream, etc. Anything pair, share activity. Students discuss their tastes and preferences. Then teacher-led discussion about recipes. What is a recipe? What is its use? What is its, when is it used? What goes into making a recipe? Those are some questions you use for the critical framing component. Then we move to textual comparisons. So students look at a recipe website and explore the different kinds of cake recipes. So they go to this website and then they look at different recipes there, and what kind of, they look at what kind of website is this and who made it, what is the purpose of this website and who is its target. Then students look at another website, different, which is which is not as professional. Then we can ask, what kind of website is this? Who made it? What is the purpose of this website and who is the target? Then they draw a comparison between the two websites based on the text, pictures, different approaches and those websites. Now we move to textual interpretation. Students identify the language used, so grammar, vocabulary, and a recipe general. Using a semantic map, the teacher leads a discussion of the processes involved in a recipe. So ingredient, time it takes to prepare it, etc. And the kind of language used, so grammatical form and vocabulary. Okay, so now we move to textual creation. So as you look at here, we start with introduction to model text, and then we move to textual comparison, and then we move to textual interpretation. And lastly, we have textual creation, where students will write a recipe for the favorite cake. And then students will orally present the recipe to the class. So that recipe that they create, they will present it to the class. Then you can have, here I use Google form, but you can use other forms to have students reflect on the lesson. So basically the reaction to the lesson. So here, this is a lesson where I use a Multi-Literacies framework. The different components and different steps would reflect the framework. Okay, so let's move back to my PowerPoint. I hope everybody can see. Okay, so for me, I think there are two frameworks that are, or two approaches that are really popular, or at least I use those two a lot more than other framework that might exist, is the communicative language teaching framework and the Multi-Literacies framework. And sometimes even when, for me, even when this is, you may not use this framework totally, there are some ways that you could use to integrate it, to use some aspect of the Multi-Literacies framework in your classroom. So one way to do that is by having some learning goals that reflect the linguistic and the cognitive and the sociocultural aspect of the Multi-Literacies framework. So this is for a Haitian Creole class that I had some learning goals that I designed for a lesson for that class. And for linguistic goals, I have students will be able to identify appropriate vocabulary to describe clothing. Students will be able to identify and use indefinite articles, descriptive adjective, especially adjectives of color and expressions to ask others about their preferences in clothing and the target language. Students will be able to identify particularities and names of clothing based on gender of a person. Students will be able to discuss and compare their clothing to that of their classmate. For cognitive goals, students will be able to identify, use, and compare various articles, so definite and indefinite in Haitian Creole. Students will be able to interpret and analyze the relationship between types of clothing in Haiti and socioeconomic status. For sociocultural goals, students will be able to identify different types of clothing that are popular in Haiti and compare these types of clothing to their own cultures. Students will be able to reflect on differences and similarities between traditional clothing in Haiti and traditional clothing in the country and culture. This is a way you can also start thinking about asking students, we're moving from what to why and how questions. What it seems usually they are really, they have students focus a lot on the text to give them to. But if you start saying why this is the case, and how do you know this is the case? Well, you tapping on their experiences, and you give them more room to analyze, to interpret, and to show you how they are designing their own meanings. And those are inference questions usually. Also think about at home and in class reflections. Give them room to reflect on what they learn. If we don't have time in class, it's fine. You can have them write a few sentences about the lesson, about a topic, to see what they're thinking, the thought process. And then have them use more general-based assignments and tasks at home and in class. Instead of saying, maybe write a paragraph, maybe we have to start thinking about write a blog, write a letter, write an email, right? These are different genres, and based on the genres, they come with different conventions. So these are some things we can think about. In general, since students use technology a lot, we do too. So it makes sense to use technology in class, especially the web 2.0. Sometimes we can, there's a fear about using technological platforms or even social media, but sometimes it's good to do that. And students usually find that fun. They can see the clear alignment between what we do in class and what we do outside of class. They can see the purposes of these activities that we are doing, okay, in class. Okay, so I think at this point, I'd like to talk about the different components. And so just think about maybe maybe a lesson about hobbies, okay? Just think about what kind of task, and also maybe what type of constraint and challenges that you may find when it comes to the multi-literacies approach. So challenges, and it's a room. It's a room for you to ask any questions that you have, and also challenges or constraints that you may face when you're using this approach. Do you have any question?
Terrific. Have you come to the end of your presentation part, Gerdine?
Yeah, so basically I'm asking whether people have any concerns, any...
Terrific. So the way that, Gerdine, the way these work, people can't speak right now, but they can write in the chat.
Right. So, I am looking at it right now.
So how about, Gerdine, ask what you would like people to potentially ask you in the chat.
So basically what they'd like me to, so they want me to, you want me to write it?
No. Whatever, people can share if they have questions. Like, are there specific things you want them to ask about?
Oh, basically I want them to, since we talk about the Multi-Literacies framework, and we talk about the different aspects and how to implement it, and I am asking, based on their experiences, do they think about any constraint or any challenges that they may face using that framework?
Terrific. So it's a bit tough. If anyone wants to write about that in the chat and share it, perhaps. We'll give everyone a few minutes. How does that sound? Okay, so can you keep that question up there, Gerdine?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, it's not here anymore?
The question went away
Oh,
that you had.
okay.
So what are some constraints or some challenges, 有什么挑战, right, when you're using this sort of approach? What do you think might be some of the challenges or limitations? So if anyone wants to like share their thoughts, and you can write it in English, or you can write it in Mandarin, you can write it in Chinese, that's fine. I can translate.
Or if you have any other questions.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. If anyone has any other questions, we'll also open up, just insert them in the chat, write them in the chat, and feel free to write them in English. You can write them in Mandarin if you'd like. I can translate them for Gerdine. Yeah, so I also, Gerdine, one thing that was coming up in the chat while so please, everyone, feel free to ask questions now in the chat. And I'll keep my eyes open. Gerdine, one thing people were asking about was, would you be willing to share this PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'll be willing to do that.
Terrific. So could you share it in the chat just like you shared the document earlier?
Yes, let me try.
Thank you. I think people are really interested in the different, these steps and learning about the different activities that you referenced. There it is. So we have a question from Dora Chen regarding the available design by using students' prior knowledge, how to identify students' misconceptions. So those are some of the challenges.
And so again, with when it comes to misconception, if we consider the Multi-Literacies framework, now misconception or the way we would define it would be different, because we almost don't think of ideas students bring to the table as incorrect, because everybody sees, something, an event, or for example, an image differently based on your culture, based on your just experience you had. So instead, we see this as a way to enrich our discussions. And sometimes if a student, I may say something, we can have differences in opinions, but we wouldn't call it misconception. So basically, if somebody says, oh, this is not what I think, then as an instructor, I won't say, oh, you're wrong. Even though I share the same idea as that other student, I won't say, oh, no, that's not how it is. I would say, why do you think this is the case? How do you know this is the case? Right? So, even when we have students create something, we grade them based on how do we present that task. Now, I'm not saying grammatical knowledge, I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm saying that's not the most important thing. What we focus more on is whether they can apply that skill. Okay, so that we become a little bit more flexible with the idea of misconception, and we guide students more than telling them what they have to believe.
So I want to be mindful of time, but I really want us to get to Josh Wang's question, which Gerdine, I'll invite you. You can. Well, I'll read the question. Other than surveys on Google Forms, for example, that are completed in class, might you have any ways that you could assess outcomes from this, and maybe just to make it more specific, outcomes to transformed practice of students? How would you go about assessing it?
I mean, obviously, when we have transformed practice, you have a rubric, right, to look at the students' work. And the Google survey is a way for them to reflect. And if you want to say the actual product, it's by having them redesign what they learn. For example, if it was a story, maybe you can have them write a dialogue. So it's basically recreating with what they know already. So yeah, you can use the Google survey to see whether they appreciate or what they think of the lesson, and which is part of what we would call formative assessment. It might tell you as an instructor whether they appreciate this topic, whether they don't. So you know what to do next time. Okay. But where you really see that meaning making, the transformation, is in the transform practice activity.
Thank you, Gerdine. And clearly, like, yeah, a well-written rubric where that you've shared with students ahead of time, so they know what you're going to be looking for, and that, you know, you're looking for that creativity, that input of their own lived experiences as aspects of what you're grading, in addition to the correct grammar and things of that nature. So a really good rubric is your short answer.
Yeah.
One final thing, because I want to be mindful of time, but I do, and this touches on Jen's point, as well as then what Catherine brought up, I think, a little bit as well. But this notion that, well, this seems really good, this multi-literacies approach framework seems great, but maybe can students in their second semester or even second year of learning a foreign language, can they do this? Right? Or is this only for more advanced students? So what would you say to the more beginner or intermediate level instructor?
So first of all, you can use it from first year to fourth year. Okay, I've used it in first year. Now, the key is sometimes we have to let go of the L2. It doesn't have to be completely in the L2. So for example, situated practice can be in the L2, right? Because we're relying on what they know already. Maybe it's something we did in the previous lesson they're using. Other instruction, we can have a mixture here, especially at the beginners, right? The beginners, they can have this because it's more like we have to make sure they get those rules really well. Critical framing, that's mostly, at least in the first and second semester, usually that's where we use the L1. Because you're asking why, you're saying how. First year, they don't have enough grammatical or vocabulary knowledge and to be able to express this clearly in the L2. Transform practice is usually in the L2 because that's where they apply these newly formed or creating meaning in a new context. So first year, we have some flexibility, but after that, when you get to third, fourth, usually they don't have any issue with doing it completely and the L2. And this is, if you're looking at more like K to 12, right? Even if they are really young, we can frame the questions a little bit easier and a way for them to understand and being able to respond. So we have to scaffold. Scaffolding is the key, and they'll be able to do it. You'll be surprised.
Thank you so much, Gerdine. So just so everyone knows, 我们现在要就是关我们的中文翻译，所以就是从现在开始，我们的那个中文翻译就没了。但是 we can continue going, but there's the Chinese translation is officially off, the interpretation. So I am managing that. I'm ending the interpretation now.
是官方结束了，谢谢。
Okay, so you could hear. All right, so thank you very much, Li Hao and Andy, for giving our interpretation tonight. And I want to really quickly I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but thank you all for asking really great questions. I really appreciate it. I do really quickly, what do you think to Joy's question about would you allow them to use references or online translations?
Ooh. References of, so where they get information, or what types of references?
Oh, actually, while Joy is writing that in the chat, I'm going to interrupt real quick. Gerdine, could I trouble you to stop sharing your screen?
Oh yeah, of course, sorry.
No worries. I'm going to share my screen. I want to remind everyone of a couple things. Firstly, while everyone's still here, next week, we will be hearing from Ding, who about task-based instruction, which is something that I know all of our students, regardless whether they're in primary school, all the way through high school, task-based instruction is so useful. So I hope that you'll all come for Ding's talk next week. Ding will be giving her presentation in Mandarin as well, which is great. So yeah, so come to that. And then also, I wanted you all to be aware that, what did I just, hello?
I'm here, but
oh, okay. Is everyone still there?
I see 55 people still.
I don't know what happened to my screen. Oh, here we go. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Everyone's still here. That was so weird. Something weird happened. Anyways, share screen. I wanted everyone to be aware of this as an event, and I'm going to, in the chat, put a link to this event that we have coming up that your students might be interested in. Here in the chat, you can all view it now. We have a story circle, which is open. This is important. It's open to all juniors and seniors in high school, as well as college students. So for many of you, this does not apply, but any students that you have or students that you're in touch with, anyone that's learning Chinese as a second language or identifies as Chinese or Chinese American in any way is welcome to join us for our story circle, where we come together as a community of curious hearts to share stories across language and cultural lines. So if you'd like to learn more information about this or our other events, again, please just email me at Frank Dolce. I'm putting it in the chat at stcloudstate.edu. I can share a lot more information about these. Yes, if you would like any of this via email, Crystal or anyone else, all you have to do is shoot me an email and I will provide you with plenty of information about our monthly story circles that we do. These are great opportunities for building intercultural skills and as well as language skills. Again, why did that happen again? This keeps every time there we go. All right, we're back. All right, so we've come to the end of the talk.
Joy.
Yes, did Joy clarify?
Yeah, quickly, yeah.
All right,
It's
the floor is yours.
Online website, and when it comes to reference, I think it's online website or copy paste from other people's work. That would not be favorable because the role of the Multi-Literacies framework is to be able to create your own features, right? You should be able to, you can read in a website, right? You can use a blog, but then you take whatever you understand from that blog and you create something new with it. So copying what somebody does already, we wouldn't encourage that practice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And for the question, the version of that flyer I just shared it's a PNG, it's a picture file. If you would like a PDF version of the flyer, I'm happy to share it with you via email. So just email me again at the email address I provided, and I can share that with you. So Gerdine, thank you so much for your time. This is the end of me. It's been a pleasure to have you. We are so lucky to have you. Thank you for giving us your time, especially with all your with your kids and your busy family and your busy work life. So thank you so much. So now I would like to ask that everyone who is not an intern in our program at St. Cloud State or through that program to please leave. Thank you for participating. We hope you come next week. Thank you all for being here for this really fascinating talk on Multi-Literacies framework. And I hope you all check it out and read through Gerdine's slides again and use this. It's really great. But we do have some of our interns who are here. If you are an intern through our program, please let me know right now, and I'm going to just like write in the chat. 就是如果你是我们的 intern， 你要在 chat 里面说我是 intern， 就是因为我不是特别熟悉所有你们10位的名字，所以就是我要确认一下。我知道于彤，于红，但是于红以外我不太清楚有谁在。So intern here, Yu Hong. There's it. Okay. So I will make Yu Hong live. I'm looking for you, Yu Hong. Yu Hong. 我在找。Oh, wait. Yu Hong. He. Okay. Sing He. Oh, there you are. More. Promote to panelist. There's Yu Hong. Intern here. Is anyone else here an intern? All right, so I'm going to ask that everyone, and also I want to turn off the recording.